work for it, ride for it, I'ma organize for it. Stay up in the night and in the morning, I'ma rise for it. Heart for it, mind for it, ears for it, eyes for it. Peace and a place on this earth for me and mine for it. Work for it, ride for it, I'ma organize for it. Stay up in the night and in the morning, I'ma rise for it. Heart for it, mind for it, ears for it, eyes for it. Peace and a place on this earth for me and mine for it.
Hey, peace. Thanks for tuning in to the Money, Power, Land, Solidarity podcast. There is an explicit, fundamental link between police violence and gentrification. Gentrification is real estate capital claiming control over cities, investing, buying land for cheap and developing it for a profit. We've been interchanging the word recapitalization to describe this process as well. The connection between capitalist real estate and white supremacy is well documented. From the initial conquest of the land to the urban segregation, redlining, and restrictive racial covenants that shaped the first phase of urban real estate development, to the decapitalization of the mid-1900s that moved wealth from urban communities of color and created the white suburbs, to urban renewal that destroyed black neighborhoods to make way for freeways and downtown development, all the way to our current period of neoliberal recapitalization, displacing working class urban communities with market rate apartments, professional class homesteaders, and the consumption economy of the new urban lifestyle. The police and state violence have been used in every period to enforce the will of real estate capital, policing the race, class, and property boundaries most profitable for owners and developers. Police were used to keep black, brown, indigenous, Jewish, and other people deemed undesirable out of white neighborhoods during the era of explicit segregation and restricted covenants. Police were called on to evict working class families in the Great Recession, who lost their homes in foreclosure due to the criminal actions of banks and investors. Police are also called on to remove poor and working people from neighborhoods designated for redevelopment or gentrification. Working class renters, working class mortgage holders, the unsheltered, the unbanked, the underemployed and exploited, even those small businesses that serve a neighborhood's global working class population. We are all obstacles to profit when we are living on and in real estate that could be flipped by developers. The police are the arm of the capitalist state that uses violence to clear land, to break strikes, to discipline the poor, to protect the property of owners, to enforce segregation, to incarcerate people who have been locked out of economic and civil life. In the context of an American city being recapitalized, this is done through the criminalization of existing residents standing in the way of real estate profits. It looks like new substations opened in neighborhoods targeted by developers. Aggressive, stop and frisk, broken window style patrolling, harassment, an increase in traffic stops, petty tickets and fees, intimidation, and coordination with developers and landlords to create an environment conducive to high rents, tourism, and consumption. We can see the police serving this function in cities undergoing gentrification across the country. The family of Breonna Taylor filed a lawsuit that claimed the city of Louisville and the Louisville Police Department killed Breonna in the midst of a targeted harassment program designed to clear the block where she lived for a redevelopment project. Indeed, in June, after Breonna was killed, the city and a land bank bought the house where she was murdered for $1. Tom Gisler blew the whistle on the Atlanta Police Department's coordinated effort to clear the Bedford Pines apartment complex through aggressive policing to make way for a real estate flip. The former officer Gisler said the following: "A homeowner in the area was very frank with me. He said the guys who own Bedford Pines got their tax bill last year, and their taxes were assessed based on all the gentrification that's happening in the area. So they wanted to move everybody out of these apartments and knock them down, rebuild these nice, expensive apartments. First, the government said no. And so then they said, well, that's okay, we'll just increase the rent. They tried to increase the rent, and the Section 8 guys came back and said, no, you can't do that either. The only way you can evict or do anything like that is if the person who owns the apartment is convicted of a felony. So the Bedford Pines guys just went to the police department and said, we want you to police in here, and we're going to give you a section of Bedford Pines to actually have office space. And I want you to lock up as many people as possible so we can make these apartments vacant and we can knock them down." Professor Brandon Beck studies policing, city budgets, housing markets, and suburbanization at the University of Colorado, Denver. In a statistical analysis of New York City from 2009 to 2015, Professor Beck analyzed policing trends in neighborhoods whose low-income residents and lack of recent housing construction made them natural targets for gentrification. He found that, of this group, neighborhoods that experienced increased real estate reinvestment were more likely to see intensified misdemeanor policing than those that did not. As property values increased in those neighborhoods, so did order maintenance arrests for offenses like loitering and disorderly conduct, as well as proactive arrests for offenses like drug possession and driving while intoxicated. We see the process Professor Beck was describing currently in Minneapolis with the creation of the Elliott Park Phillips neighborhood power shift by the Minneapolis Park Police. The Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board and the Park Police, citing an increase of calls for safety and complaints in these areas, have designated Elliott Park and the Phillips neighborhoods focused areas for increased policing and are now deploying more officers in a newly created 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. power shift. In 2019, the Parks and Power campaign collaborated on research with the University of Minnesota that shows these same neighborhoods, Elliott Park and Phillips, as the areas of the city experiencing the sharpest overall increases in rent. Elliott Park has seen a staggering amount of real estate investment, along with its new developer-appointed nickname, East Town. Already with US Bank Stadium, the Krause Anderson HQ development, the Elliott Hotel and Finnegan's Brewery Complex, there are several other big money market rate developments in construction. Not coincidentally, Elliott Park was the first place targeted for the RAD privatization of public housing, with United Properties partner firm the Royal Bank of Canada taking ownership of the Elliott Twins public housing high-rises. This influx in real estate capital means increased police harassment for working class and poor communities. The new Park Police power shift is designed to make the new professional class feel safe from the working class communities of color that have lived in these neighborhoods for decades. Phillips is next on the developer's menu, and the police are trying to clear the table. We saw this power shift in action during the violent evictions of encampments of unsheltered people in both Elliott and PV Park. The visible presence of unsheltered people dampens the market for real estate profiteers, so police were called in with bulldozers, front-loading dumpsters, pepper spray, and heavy weaponry. Beyond the Park Board's power shift, another place we can see this connection between real estate and policing is the maxed out donations from capitalist class developers like United Properties to Jacob Fry, and Jacob Fry's determination to protect and increase police funding. Developments like United Properties' Macy's remodel on the Nicollet Mall, or their Gateway Tower, or their Upper Harbor Terminal project in North Minneapolis, these developments lock a substantial amount of working people, especially Black, Brown, and Native communities, out of economic life in this city and requires well-armed police to enforce these deeply unjust arrangements. Concluding a recent Mother Jones article discussing these connections, Professor Beck wrote the following. Sadly, Breonna Taylor is only the latest example of a Black or Latinx person killed by the police against a backdrop of gentrification. Eric Garner was killed by an NYPD officer near recently renovated apartment buildings on Victory Boulevard in Staten Island. Saheed Vassell was killed by the NYPD just seconds after they confronted him in a rapidly gentrifying neighborhood in Brooklyn. Alex Nieto, a lifelong resident of San Francisco's Bernal Heights neighborhood, was shot there by 4 officers after 2 white people called 911. These deaths are reminders that the struggles for affordable housing and against hyper-policing are intertwined. End quote. Naming and understanding these connections is crucial to ending the police violence, housing insecurity, precarity, and incarceration that's plaguing us. To abolish the police, we must transform the hierarchical order, the balance of wealth and power they protect, the housing markets and labor markets they enforce. The movement for a police-free future is aiming to go from capitalist scarcity, insecurity, and poverty to collective wealth, security, and abundance. We are moving towards universal housing, towards collective guarantees of income, food, medicine, childcare, education, mental health support. We're not looking for higher tech police or private police protecting the rich from the poor. We want no more poverty and no more police. Obviously, the city budgeting process is an important field in the battle for a better city. But lower profile, longer term development projects like the Upper Harbor Terminal are just as important. The direction of the city budget, the parameters of debate, are set when CPED, City Council, and the mayor give public land and development rights to private real estate firms. The policing imperatives and violent dynamics we've outlined today are locked in at that point and make it much harder to move significant money away from MPD. In order to create more space in the city budget, we need to stop the market development plans preferred by real estate capital and neoliberal politicians and replace them with public housing projects, with investment in local cooperatives, with public employment projects, with public health workers, with direct economic aid. The measure of a politician's commitment to a police-free future is found in their advocacy for public housing, for rent control, for public health expenditures, for Medicare for all, generally for redistributive social and economic policies. The violence we see from the police state will continue to happen in Minneapolis until the unsheltered, renters, and working class mortgage holders are organized enough to take power away from developers, investors, and landlords. I believe we are on our way there. Money, power, land, solidarity.
have running plans about as far as they can see to keep them coming. Bands building up the company. Shonda told me I was gonna be prosperous. I listen. I'm just praying, making plays a positive addition. Trying to knock me off my spot.